The wind screamed over the high plains like a soul denied heaven. Snow slashed sideways, biting into every crevice of the land. Jonas McClain sat alone at his wooden table, staring into a cold hearth, as if daring it to catch fire from memory alone. 2 winters ago, that fire had warmed a family. Now it mocked a man who had nothing left but silence and scars. Outside, the wind changed pitch higher, panicked. The dog, Buck, growled low, rose stiffly, and padded to the door. Jonas followed with a rifle in hand. He opened it just as something collapsed onto the porch. A girl. She was young, 17, maybe. Her face smeared with blood and dirt, her coat ripped open along the sleeve. One leg twisted under her, soaked in crimson from mid-thigh down. Her lips moved but no sound came out. Jonas leveled the rifle. "Who sent you?" he barked. She didn't flinch. Her lips trembled. "No one, please." The wind surged past him, carrying her scent sweat, gunpowder, desperation. He stared at her for 3 long seconds. Then he stepped aside. She didn't thank him. She couldn't. She passed out cold. He stitched her up by lamplight. The wound was jagged, bullet grazed. It would scar. If infection didn't take her, she'd keep the leg. Maybe. She didn't wake once. He wrapped her in the wool blanket Lillian used to keep in the cedar chest. He told himself it was the only clean one. A lie, he almost believed. Come dawn, she stirred. Her eyes gray like frozen creek water met his. "You're alive," he said. She blinked at the ceiling, then whispered, "Why?" He didn't answer. He handed her a cup of water and turned away. He didn't ask her name, didn't want it, didn't need more ghosts. But by nightfall, she was still there, too weak to move. He made beans and bread, left a plate near her bed. She ate, slowly, not like someone who hadn't eaten in days, like someone who didn't trust the food. He watched her from the far end of the room. When she caught him looking, she didn't avert her eyes. She just stared back, quietly, like she saw the ruins in him and decided not to poke around. By the 3rd day, she limped to the doorway. "I'll be gone by sundown," she said. "Storm's not done. You leave. You die. I'll take my chances." "You die," he repeated. She held his stare. "I've died before." He exhaled through his nose. Stepped aside. One more night. The 4th morning she helped feed the chickens. Said her name was Clara. No last name. When he asked if she had people, she said, "Not anymore." When he asked who shot her, she said, "White men with loud mouths and empty eyes." He didn't ask again. Jonas started teaching her how to hold a knife, right? How to find water under snow. How to listen for coyotes, not wolves, because wolves let you hear them. It was the coyotes that slit your throat quiet. She listened. Never asked questions. Didn't flinch at blood. There was something in her, something cracked and sharpened, but it wasn't cruel. Just ... hardened, like wood soaked in frost too long. He woke one night to her screaming, not loud, choked. She sat up in the corner near the fire, eyes wide, breath shaking like a trapped rabbit. He didn't go to her, didn't say anything, just tossed her his wool blanket. She caught it, trembling. He went back to bed. She slept. That morning, she made coffee, burned it, but tried. He drank it anyway. He began cutting more firewood than usual. She offered to help. He taught her how to split a log without wasting strength. She missed, once, and the axe bounced. He caught it midair. "Careful," he muttered. She scowled. "I'm not made of glass." "No. You're made of anger and bruises. And you're made of ghosts." Neither spoke for a while after that. Then one night, out of nowhere, she asked, what was her name? He didn't have to ask who. He stared into the fire a long time before answering. "Lillian and Annabelle." She nodded once. "Pretty names." He nodded too. A week passed. Then another. She stayed. He didn't ask why. She didn't offer. The days got longer. but the wind still carried snow. They worked side by side, said little, understood much. One evening, as they sat eating in near silence, Clara said, "You think people can come back from who they became?" Jonas chewed his bite, swallowed. "Only if they stop pretending they didn't get lost in the first place." She looked at him a long time. "Then maybe you and I got a shot." That night, she slept on the cot without waking once. No screams, no shaking. He watched her breathe and wondered if it was possible to feel hope again without choking on it. The next day, he saddled a second horse. She looked at him, puzzled. "You said you wanted south," he said. "Still do. Why?" "Because I'm riding that way to trade. Could use help." "You sure?" "No," he admitted. "But if I wait to be sure, I'll rot right here." She smiled then, not big, but real, and it struck him like a sunrise through fog. They rode out by noon. The plains stretched vast and pale, untouched by man or mercy. He hadn't left the ranch in 18 months. Now he rode with a stranger who knew just how broken a soul could get and still keep walking. That night, under a quilt of stars, she said, "You're not as mean as you look, and you're not as tough as you act." She smirked. "Give it time," he chuckled. A low, unused sound. She looked over and said softly, "Thanks for not turning me away." He didn't reply, just poked the fire with a stick. But when he lay down, he found himself whispering the names again. Lillian, Annabelle, not as a prayer, just so the wind wouldn't forget them, and maybe so the wind would carry their memory forward, just a little. The trail south was frozen silence. Clara rode behind him, her posture stiff, eyes always scanning the horizon. She hadn't asked where they were headed, and Jonas hadn't offered. He wasn't sure it mattered. Distance itself felt like a kind of healing. The third day, they reached Red Hollow, a ghost town now. 3 cabins left half buried in snow, 1 general store sagging in on itself, and a church without a roof. Jonas dismounted and stepped into the store, hand on his rifle. Inside, dust lay thick over rusted tins. He found salt, tobacco, and a single box of cartridges. Clara followed, lifting a book from the shelf with reverence, as if it might shatter in her hands. She tucked it in her coat. They spent that night in the church. No roof, but 4 walls. Clara sat where the pews once were, knees drawn up. Jonas rested against the altar, sharpening a blade. "Do you believe?" she asked suddenly. "In what? In any of this? God, heaven, justice?" He took a long breath, let it out slowly. "I believe in wood, in fire, in the way a man's eyes go flat before he pulls a trigger." She nodded. "Then we believe in the same God." He didn't ask what she'd lost. He already knew. The next morning, they came across Track's horses, 3 of them, headed west. Jonas narrowed his eyes. Too fresh, not traders. He turned the horses east, off trail. That evening, they didn't light a fire. 3 nights later, the riders found them. No words. Just the thunder of hooves and the bark of rifles. Jonas shoved Clara behind a boulder as leads split the air. He returned fire, clipped one rider's shoulder. Clara screamed as her horse bolted, and her leg hit a stump, tearing open the healing wound. Jonas grabbed her, dragged her behind the ridge. One rider circled wide. Jonas waited, heartbeat like war drums in his chest. When the bandit rode into view, Jonas stood fast, aimed, fired. The man fell like a sack of stones. Silence returned. 2 riders fled. Jonas crouched by Clara, saw blood soaking through her pants again. She gritted her teeth. "We keep going," she said. He nodded, jaw clenched. "We keep going." For 2 days, they moved slow. She didn't complain. He didn't speak. On the 3rd, they reached the cabin half-burnt, hidden in the pines. He knew it from years ago, an old trapper's hut, inside dust and ashes, but it would hold. That night, he cleaned her wound again. She didn't flinch. Instead, she looked him dead in the eye and asked, "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer right away. "Because I didn't once, and it cost me everything." She didn't press. By morning the snow had thinned, and they heard a new sound: footsteps, but softer, controlled. Jonas raised his rifle. From the trees emerged a tall man, hair black as midnight, face lined with wind and silence. He wore buckskin, a bow slung across his back, and eyes that didn't blink. "Name's Dakota," the man said simply. "You're being hunted." Jonas nodded. "We know." Dakota looked at Clara. "You fight. I survive. Good. You'll need both." He didn't ask to join. He didn't offer help. But when the three moved out the next day, he walked beside them. Never ahead, never behind. They crossed a frozen creek, deer prints weaving through the snow. Clara watched Dakota set snares in silence. Jonas saw something in her face, not fear, not awe, recognition, like she knew the weight of being an outsider in a world built on someone else's terms. Later, Dakota handed her a flint knife. She looked up at him, surprised. He just nodded. The trust between them built without words. At night, she slept closer to the fire. Jonas noticed she didn't wake screaming anymore. She listened, now truly listened, to the silence between winds. She read the sky, the breaks in tree lines, the shift of bird. Jonas began to wonder if this was what healing looked like: not loud, not grand, just subtle survival. But danger followed close. Dakota confirmed it. He found a campsite, a half-day's ride behind them. Same men, same smell of blood and smoke. "They won't stop," Jonas muttered. "Then we stop them," Clara said flatly. Jonas looked at her. "You sure about that?" "No," she said, "but I'm tired of waiting to be killed." They prepared. Dakota rigged trip lines. Clara sharpened blades. Jonas dug a blind under snow. When the attackers came at dawn, the traps held. 2 horses fell. A third rider fired wildly before Dakota brought him down with a silent arrow. But the fourth man, older, heavier, circled wide, came in from the rear. He caught Clara off guard. Jonas heard her cry out, saw her go down. He charged blind, tackling the man in a snowdrift. Fists flew. The man was stronger, younger. He slammed Jonas into a tree trunk, raised his knife butt. Clara rose behind him and drove her blade into the man's neck. Blood steamed on snow. Afterward, Jonas sat panting, head in his hands. Clara stood over the corpse, face unreadable. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she whispered, "but I'm alive." They buried the body. Dakota said nothing, just offered Clara a leather cord, motioned to tie her hair back. A warrior's sign. She accepted. They traveled north a while, to lose the trail. On the 6th day, they reached a rise, overlooking the valley. Below, Jonas saw something he hadn't seen in years. Sunlight touching green, not white. Grass breaking. Through thaw. A new season, finally. He sat down heavily. Clara joined him. "You ever think about just, stopping?" she asked. "All the time, and never seemed like something I deserved." She was quiet, then said, "You do now." He didn't reply. Later that night, she placed something by his bedroll, a small whittled figure. A woman, holding a child, rough, but unmistakable. "Found it in your bag," she said. "Thought it belonged out here." Jonas took it in his hands. His fingers shook. "I carved this the day they died." She looked at him, then let them live again. "In you," the fire crackled. Somewhere far off, wolves howled. But they didn't feel as close anymore. Jonas whispered, "Thank you." She didn't smile, just nodded. And for the first time in a long time, he slept through the night without dreams. Come morning, Dakota was gone. No footprints, no sound, just gone. Clara looked around, confused. Jonas wasn't. "He goes where he's needed," he said. She turned to him. "Where do we go now?" He looked at the horizon. then at her home. And this time, he meant it. They buried Dakota beneath the aspen grove. At dawn, the snow had softened enough for a shallow grave. Clara placed a handful of sage over the mound. Jonas laid the wooden angel without a word. No prayers were spoken. None were needed. Jonas stood, in silence, hat in hand, watching the breath leave his chest and vanish like ghosts. Clara remained kneeling, fingers buried in frozen earth. When she finally rose, her eyes had changed. Something deeper had settled in them. Not grief, not fear. Something older, like knowing. The journey home was quiet. No threats lingered. No voices echoed through the trees. Clara rarely spoke, but when she did, her words landed with the weight of years. "I used to think the worst thing was being hunted," she said once. "But it's forgetting who you are that kills you." Jonas nodded. He knew that death better than most. When they reached the ranch, it didn't look any different. The same broken fence rails, the same roof sagging under its own memories. But Jonas saw it new, not as a monument to what he'd lost, but as a place to begin again. They repaired the front gate first, then the chicken coop. Clara found the old garden beds beneath the snow, turned the soil with bare hands until her knuckles bled. Jonas brought in timber from the valley. They worked without plans, without maps. Just instinct and quiet purpose. At night, she read by lamplight. The book she'd taken from the ghost town was missing pages, but she read it cover to cover anyway. Jonas carved. Not just angels now, horses, wolves, birds, mid-flight. He handed one to Clara, without explanation. She smiled and tucked it into her coat. One evening, Clara found the photograph, tucked beneath the floorboard in Jonah's room. His wife and child, stiff and unsmiling the way photos were back then, but unmistakably beautiful. She didn't say anything, just left it on the table, beside his plate. When Jonas came in from chopping wood and saw it, he didn't speak either. He sat down, ate his stew, and left it where it was. The past no longer needed hiding. One morning, Clara didn't come down for chores. Jonas climbed the stairs, knocked once. No answer. He opened the door and found her sitting on the floor, coat in her lap, eyes blank. "They were here," she said quietly. "The men who killed my brother, they came back. I remember one of them missing teeth, red scarf. I thought he died that night, but I saw him in the canyon, watching us. He ran." Jonas knelt. "You sure?" "I'll never forget his face." Jonas stood, fetched his rifle, checked the chamber. "Then we finish it." She followed without question. They tracked for days. Through hills and barren scrub. Every fire pit, every crushed twig led them deeper into the desolation. Jonas watched, her move low, steady, fearless. She wasn't the same girl he'd pulled from the snow. She wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. They caught the trail outside Devil's Spine. Smoke rose in the distance. Jonas saw 3 men by a fire, one with a red scarf tied around his boot. Clara's breath caught. Her hand clenched the rifle until her knuckles whitened. "You don't have to do this," Jonas said. "I do." They waited for nightfall. Clara circled wide, while Jonas crept to the ridge. One of the men wandered toward the trees to relieve himself. Jonas dropped him without a sound. Clara made her move when the second man turned to grab more firewood. Her first shot hit his leg. He screamed, scrambling toward the rocks. The third man ran. Jonas sprinted after him, boots tearing. Through brush, the bandit turned and fired blindly. Jonas dove, rolled, came up shooting. The man spun, hit, and fell hard. Clara approached the man with the red scarf, still moaning in the snow. She knelt beside him. "You remember me?" she asked. The man blinked, blood in his teeth. "Girl from the mill. Thought you were dead. You made sure my brother was." He grinned, even through the pain. He squealed like she didn't let him finish. Silence again. Jonas joined her as she stood. Her hands were steady, her eyes calm. "That it?" he asked. She looked to the horizon. That's enough. They returned to the ranch without celebration. That spring, wildflowers pushed through the thawing ground like tiny rebellions. Clara planted roots, real ones, by the window. Basil, mint, wild tobacco. Jonas hung new horseshoes on the barn. They took in a stray dog, half-blind and mean-looking. Clara named him Whiskey. Word got out in town that the old McClain place wasn't so dead after all. Folks started stopping bite raiders, drifters, ranch hands, looking for a day's work. One day, a woman came to the porch with a baby on her hip, eyes darting like prey. No questions, she asked. Jonas just nodded. No questions. Clara brought them. Stew. More came in the months after. Some stayed. Most didn't. But every soul left fed, warm, and just a little lighter than when they arrived. The ranch became something else. Not a fortress. Not a graveyard. A waypoint. A refuge. One night, Jonas sat on the porch, whittling by lantern light. Clara joined him, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. You ever think about leaving again? She asked. He shook his head. Not anymore. She took a sip. Good, because this is home. He looked at her, saw the lines that hardship had carved into her, and the resilience that filled them like gold in cracks. She was no longer the wounded girl on his porch. She was the soul of the place. I think, he said slowly, you gave me back more than I ever thought I could have. She smiled. I didn't give you anything you didn't already have inside. A shooting star crossed the sky above them. The wind carried the scent of cedar and rain. Somewhere in the dark, an owl called. The past would never leave them. Grief still lingered in quiet corners of the cabin, in the sound of the wind through certain trees, but it no longer ruled them. They had each other, and that was enough. As the firelight flickered, Jonas stood, set down the knife and wood. Come morning, he said, we build the new fence line. Clara raised her cup. 2 new fences? He touched his to hers, and for the first time in years, Jonas McClain went to bed looking forward to tomorrow. Closing narration. CTA. 100 words. Some people wait a lifetime for salvation. Others find it when they least expect it, in a storm, in a stranger, in a second chance. Jonas gave Clara 1 night of shelter. She gave him back a life worth living. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. What would you have done in Jonas' boots, or Clara's? Share your thoughts below, and remember, no matter how far gone you feel, it's never too late to turn the page and start again.